Hi, my name is Abhishek Shah, and I'm the co-founder and group CEO at RSA Global. We are an end-to-end supply chain organization with a focus on technology. We operate in 4 different regions with about 600 people around the world. So RSA started in the UAE in 2009, and our first area of international expansion was Kenya. Why we chose Kenya was actually to do with market familiarity. I grew up in Kenya, I have family in Kenya, so I understood how to do business there. But actually going into Kenya with a different service for what we did there traditionally was actually very challenging, because we were very good at doing a particular service in our home market, but we went into the market doing something else that was connected to the logistics industry but wasn't really our strength. And that meant that we scaled an organization there and had to scale it back down with little success, primarily because we didn't go in doing our strength. And I would say that my organization at that point in time was fairly young and not mature enough to have very good controls for running an international organization as a part of the company. So if I was to redo that again, the steps that I would take to ensure that we were successful was, 1, I would make sure that we had done a good amount of market research as what's the pain points in that market, understand how our current strengths and our local knowledge strengths could actually help build that product for our customers. Make sure I have a very good management team that was actually either exported out of headquarters to manage, that understood our processes and understood what we were supposed to actually do in terms of how we run an organization. And then thirdly would be to make sure we had the right customer backing well in advance before we went into that market. So after the learnings of our expansion into Kenya that had to be scaled back down, we wanted to go to a much larger market. And how we chose this was based on future potential of how that industry would evolve in that market. And so we chose India. And India was driven by the fact that the Middle East was very oil dependent from an economy perspective. We chose an economy with very strong domestic consumption. But when entering that kind of a market, it's complicated, it's big, it's audacious in terms of every element of it. We went to our current customers in those markets and basically asked them, what problems do they have and how could we help them solve there? And they gave us ideas of organizations that we could partner with that were at a point that could basically benefit from our people, processes, and technology to elevate them to the next level, and them as a customer would ultimately benefit. And that turned out to be a very good strategy of understanding what's the best way to enter a market and getting customer validation at the start point. But the challenges that we faced there was the challenges of opening into such a large bureaucratic country, where it was very tough to really understand what is the reality of how business is run and what are the drivers of that organization. So my only advice, if you were to enter a market like India, we ended up doing an acquisition, was don't cut any costs on your due diligence process. It's multiple in terms of financial, legal, technical, and taxation that you should really make sure you're very clear with. At the end of the day today, we built a great success story of turning around an organization, and we're poised for exponential growth, but I could have cut out a year if I'd done that correctly in the beginning. Our last expansion that we did was into the Hong Kong, China region. And this was driven primarily by the e-commerce industry that originates out of Hong Kong and China. And again, this taught me that it doesn't matter what you do everything right from the previous learnings, that there's some things you cannot control going forward. So we had the privilege of opening just in time for the Hong Kong protests and the regional unsettlement. And that doesn't mean business has stopped, it's just slowed us down and we've had to recalibrate our goals. But making sure the right team was there was actually the most important piece, and we're pretty happy with how we progressed from that perspective. And that's again a decentralized organization working with local partnerships to make sure we're able to build our complete service stack to our customers. So overall, international expansion is something that all of us want to do, or we want to do it for our customers. We may have investors that push us to do this. But I think there's some key fundamentals that we must have in place before we think about this. So one is, do you have the correct control measures in an organization to actually help you expand internationally and monitor it correctly? Number 2 is making sure that you choose markets correctly and you got to time them right. I think timing is the most critical element for a market entry perspective. And the last piece would be to make sure that you choose the right partners in every market if you're going in light. And I think that will give you a formula for potential success if you can get those right. And of course, you have always the unknown of the unknown, which you got to deal with when that happens.